Welcome to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein from Connecticut Capital. In this podcast, we help business owners and successful professionals plan for better wealth outcomes. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to help you identify better wealth decisions to help you achieve an unfettered life. It's time to ask yourself, what do you want more of?
Hello and welcome to Unfettered Wealth with Eric Tashlein. Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Hey, Eric. Doing great today.
All right. Now, this is going to be an interesting podcast. I don't think that I've ever really thought about how these two things work together. And I know that you have brought up some good information you're going to bring to the audience today and hopefully educate me. And we'll talk about my situation here in a few minutes. But we're not going to talk about that right off the bat. What are you going to talk about today?
Sure. So, in sitting down with clients over the decades, I have so many good savers that are part of my client base, but I also recognize that many of them are just grinders. I mean, they'll work 6 days a week. And some of those folks over the years had really not taken care of themselves from a health standpoint, right? It's all about effectiveness and execution at work. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, they didn't do the same thing for themselves on a daily basis when it comes to health. So I thought, here we are, we're in a COVID environment. Some of my friends and family have struggled with their health in terms of some weight gain during this period. So I thought it was appropriate just to talk a little bit about how health and wealth combine.
Okay, yeah, and how they work together and kind of against each other in some situations, I assume.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and obviously it's a topic that's been around, for the ages, really. I mean, there was a Greek physician who was quite famous, fullest. I'm probably not saying that correctly. And he was quoted as saying,
he won't know.
He won't know either. When
right.
health is absent, wealth is useless, right? And today we all say, hey, all the money in the world can't buy you good health. So I thought it was a good conversation to have for sure.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a song I believe out there. It's quite famous that I enjoy. That all the money in the world won't buy you another moment, which obviously deals with your health. And yeah, with COVID, it is a bit of a scary time. This is we're not trying to do any fear mongering here or anything, but let's be realistic. Yeah. It is definitely something that's on a lot of people's minds right now. So what would you say is one of the biggest issues? Now, you said earlier people just grinding. And as a business owner myself, I've caught myself doing that and completely ignoring any type of physical exercise just to get to that next thing that I want to get accomplished, whatever's on my list of things that I have to do in a day.
No, for sure. I think it's, I think we all just put our head down and the blinders on. And, I guess I grew up, it's funny, I grew up and saw the effects of some poor habits and so forth. And we all have them. Listen, I think I've lost and gained 1,000 pounds during my lifetime. And, but I remember my dad, like when we would go visit relatives in Kentucky, we'd go down there and he'd fill up the station wagon with cartons of cool cigarettes because it was a lot cheaper than in Connecticut. There were fewer taxes. But I also, I was there during the process of his aging. He quit in retirement smoking, but, emphysema crept in. And I was there during that period in the last year where he needed some long-term care help, I should say. And it's so, those, we all have those self-inflicted wounds. So I just thought it was important to bring up. I know my dad was a pretty good saver for a hardworking blue collar man, but I know today, like if my dad was here today as a younger man, I mean, if he was buying those packs of cigarettes, it's $10 a day. So it definitely impacts your immediate health and certainly your long-term financial security. So that was a legit topic to address.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, smoking is obviously, we've learned through the past decades that it's just absolutely not good. And we know that it's hard on the budget. It's hard on the wallet. It's hard on your health. It's hard on your family. And even, I would even bring up the things in your home. I mean, how many times do you have to get rid of things or replace things because they're either covered with that tar residue stuff. And we've seen, furniture that's just gross and electronics don't work as well. That's just fact. So, I mean, it can definitely cost you a lot. Now, when you're talking about smoking, that's one thing. But what other health issues are you seeing?
really it runs the gamut. And listen, we all have vices these days. What I do see, not necessarily in my client population, because obviously, if you're wealthier, I think there's it's been shown that you have less health issues. You're generally making better choices. I don't think I have anybody at this point, maybe that I can think of, that's still smoking, but it's prevalent out there for sure. Certainly, obesity is a huge issue. I think 70% of the country right now is considered obese or overweight. And it's interesting, as I was preparing for this conversation, it's actually, some of the studies are showing that being overweight, being obese, it actually is a negative impact of about 5,000 a year for women and about 3,000 a year for men. Yeah, it's significant, right? And not a big deal if you're making $500,000 a year, but for some of those folks out there that are just struggling to save, it's a huge deal. And part of it is, it's interesting. Some of the things they list that are part of that 5,000 for women are wage discrimination, insurance costs, and lost wages due to having to stay home and so forth. So it's definitely a large cost when you consider that these days people are retiring with less than $100,000, and so that $5,000 along the way really makes a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean that is staggering. I did not know that statistic. That's huge, and that's no pun intended there. That's a huge amount of money, and not a huge woman or a man. Let's clarify. That's a huge amount of money on a yearly basis for anybody. Yeah, if you're wealthy, maybe you don't really care, but I would. I'm not wealthy by any means, and so that's interesting. I never knew that. I will say this, Eric, and you said that your clients that are wealthy, you don't necessarily know of any of them that are smoking at this point. And working with a lot of advisors for many, many years, I have seen, and maybe you can attest to this, a lot of times I've seen clients that are quite wealthy, they actually drink more. And I don't know if it's because there's more social drinking in those types of circles, possibly, but that may be something that creeps in it. Did you see anything in your studies about that?
I did not. I think most of the studies reflecting higher income versus lower income, there was a significant greater heart disease, diabetes, eyesight, depression, and so forth for folks that had lower income. So there's definitely an advantage. I mean, you can pay for help, you can buy better food and so forth at higher wages. So I didn't, but it would make sense, right? For sure.
Yeah, interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Now, I will tell you this: I am drinking right now, actually, as we're doing this podcast.
Wait a second. This is morning hours. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Mountain Dew. That's the problem. See, you said everybody has a vice, and I know it's probably not good for me, but when it's really warm, like in summertime, it's hard for me to drink coffee because coffee's hot. Yeah. I'm hot. It's hot outside. And so a nice cold Mountain Dew, even if it's in the morning, I love that. And I know it's so bad for me, Eric. I just know it is. It's a hard habit to break.
Don't worry.
Okay, don't let her listen to this podcast.
Listen, and we're all guilty of things. It is interesting. So as I was reading on this, they're saying that some of the studies are showing about 2/3 of the bankruptcies in the United States are caused by medical-related issues. So I'm just... As I get older, I celebrated with a buddy his 50th birthday last night. I'm a little older than that. Yeah, I'm just trying to be a little better. And it's hard. So Mountain Dew, I totally get it.
All right. So what can we do? I mean, let's talk about what changes can be made.
Well, I would say, if you're preparing for your escape and you want to be a man or woman of leisure and enjoy a long, healthy retirement, I think it's just part of your goal process, right? Like, recognizing that, hey, I'm sucking down a couple Mountain Dews each morning, and that's probably not helping me with my longer term goals, right? And it's just, I think it's hard. Listen, I'm guilty of it. I know I could stand to lose another 15 pounds, and I probably ate a couple extra meatballs last night. So we're all prone to it, whether it's stress eating or whatever the case may be. But it does affect, it definitely affects your savings, like we talked about. So the longer you can work and put into your 401k, the better, right? From a retirement standpoint. And college isn't getting any cheaper, so you want to work a little longer to pay for college. along the lines of the Mountain Dew, what is interesting that they're saying, since the 80s, obesity rates have doubled in the U.S., and that was a CDC
Wow.
estimate. Which so you kind of ask yourself, why is this happening? Why is this occurring? And it's interesting. And one of the things I did see, which there was a researcher, Ann Lowry. She had an article in the New York Times. It was 5 or 6 years ago, and this I found fascinating. That in Fairfax, Virginia, which is a suburb of D.C., the average man lived to 82, and women lived to 85, and that's actually about the same level as Sweden, which has some of the best ages, in terms of mortality rates in the world.
Huh.
But then, just about 300 miles away in McDowell County, West Virginia, men only lived to 64, which is, I think, about an 18-year swing to the negative, and women to 73. And they're saying the average life expectancy in West Virginia in that county is similar to that of Iraq, right?
Wow.
So there's huge discrepancies. And I think it just comes down to diet, lifestyle. Obviously, in the DC area, there's an income factor as well.
Working with kids, we saw a lot of issues with two parents working or a single parent who's working, and what kind of meals are being prepared. Fast, easy, quick meals are easy, right? And it's
Sure.
easy to do that, or it's easy to have kids prepare some meals when mom's out working and they're by themselves. And
Sure.
it's usually not the healthiest because it's instant, or it's microwavable, or it's whatever. And so I can see definitely children's obesity going up, and even two-parent families that are making decent money, you want to call them right in the middle. It's if they're both working and everybody's hurried, well, there's a lot of fast food going on. And
Sure.
we know that's not the healthiest option. So I know there's a huge issue with children being obese in this country as well. And again, it speaks
sure.
back to what you said,
Yeah.
as far as patterns and habits and just education and training, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I help out at the local homeless shelter, and also this past week, I was very proud that as a family, we kind of help out with some of these programs where you fill up backpacks for children that
Yes, yeah.
are food insecure in the schools and outside the schools. And unfortunately, like, certain types of food can last longer, and they're not necessarily the healthiest types, right? So as
True.
we're packing fruit roll-ups and fruit juices and other items, snack items into these bags, we recognize that, hey, we can't really pack the bag with carrots because it's not going to last a day.
Yeah. No, you're
And
right.
so even I think there's a lot of good resources out there. People are trying to help folks with situations where there's financial challenges, but I think we're not there yet. And hopefully, as a country, we eventually get a little better. But it does, it does impact all socioeconomic levels. I mean, from a health standpoint, I know in Connecticut, from a financial planning standpoint, at older ages, when you're dealing with financial plan writing, we always will build in some health issues, right? And long-term care stays. And I think in Connecticut right now, it's 150 to 175,000 a year if you get ill in your retirement and you need to go into a home, which is it's insane, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, you'd said that a lot of people are retiring with less than $100,000. That's gone in half a year.
the challenge is too is like a lot of folks when they retire, even if you retire and you got $500,000 in an IRA or a 401k, it goes pretty quickly because you got to remember you're going to take some out, you're going to pay tax on it too, right? So it's not really worth it. 500,000 isn't really worth 500,000. So it does, like you said, drains really quickly. So I would just say, as part of your overall, when you're thinking about your retirement, I think as similar to doing your financial planning, I would definitely recommend I see a lot of people not getting their physicals. I see a lot of folks over 50 just not paying attention to their health. So this year, one of my big goals personally is like I want to go to a nutritionist because I felt like I needed some fine tuning. It was interesting. Yeah, and socioeconomically, I can afford that, right? I paid this nutritionist to run tests on me. But a lot of Western medicine, they miss out on certain valid tests. My nutritionist found my vitamin D was just about as low as you can get. And,
Really?
Yeah, and he's like, you can get rickets from that at those levels. I'm like, Rickets are.
I was going to say, rickets, it sounds like something I get at the Home Depot. I don't know. I don't know.
For vitamin D, I guess in colder climates, we're not outside in the sun as much, and it's an important vitamin for all of our hormones and so forth. So I'm on this beefed up vitamin regimen right now, and I'll get retested again shortly. But it was actually good timing. It was I felt like I was it was almost like financial planning, because here I am, I'm getting on top of my health. And then along the line, I saw that COVID patients that had vitamin D deficiencies really fared poorly during that sickness. Oftentimes they were the folks that were being hospitalized. So I felt good that I'd gotten on top of it a little early.
Yeah, because vitamin D being associated with sunshine, we've all been locked in our houses.
Totally.
We have not been going out. It doesn't matter if it's warm or cold. Colder climates, obviously you're speaking to that because that's absolutely true. But even in springtime and now the summertime, how many of us have just been kind of hunkered down and in a daze a lot of times? We're working from home. So even just that walk to our car into the parking lot, or walk from the parking lot to our building, or out to our house, getting together with friends outside, we're not getting together with anybody a lot of times. So I can definitely see, and I haven't even thought about vitamin D.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so last year, like many of my retired clients, I think once they retire often, and that was one of the reasons for this talk day. I feel like lots of folks, when they retire, will then take time to exercise. They tend to do a little better, getting out to play tennis or golf or what have you. So I just really wanted to encourage everybody to get on top of it early. It's as important as early saving. And it is interesting too. I mean, I would definitely recommend going to a nutritionist. There's some great podcasts out there too. I mean, if you find you have joint issues or weight issues, there's a doctor who I really found fascinating. She's out on the West Coast, Catherine Shanahan, and she was a collegiate athlete. And she kept questioning. She's like, why am I having all these knee injuries and why am I having this joint pain? And because she was in optimal health in her mind. And so when she became a physician, she really wanted to treat her patients before they got sick. Mm-hmm. So you can listen to her on many podcasts. I think she was on one of Tim Ferriss's podcasts that I caught her on as well. But her whole thought process is a lot of the pain and a lot of the obesity epidemic and a lot of the heart issues and so forth are a result of some of the unnatural oils that are part of all the processed foods today. And so she's worth listening to for sure. I mean, she's a big proponent on just, eating on the outside of aisles and so forth. And because most of the stuff on the interior aisles is filled with preservatives and so forth. Some of the other reading too I found fascinating is if you read on the blue zone regions throughout the world, where people live to their 90s and 100s regularly, some areas of Japan and some areas like Sardinia and so forth. They're eating local. They're going for a walk. They're spending time with friends. They help out from a family and friend standpoint. They're there for each other, which is important, just to have those connections. And the thing that hurts me, and I know for you too, living out in the Midwest, is that they eat less than 10% of their diet is meat, which kills me.
Well, I'm done. That's it.
Right.
Yeah. My wife would strongly disagree with that piece. I mean, she knows it's true, but no, trying to pry a steak from her hands is almost impossible.
That's funny. So and I'm with you. I mean, I grew up the same way, kind of meat and potatoes. So I'm working on that too. So that's really it. So I think, just in a nutshell, we love to see our clients live long, healthy lives, and we have seen some regret over the years of folks that have retired and their health went sideways or south, and they really couldn't do much about it at that point. So today was just encouraging folks to see their doctor, go to a nutritionist, get up out of their chair after 4 or 5 hours at work, and just go for a walk and clear your head, and hopefully live a long, healthy life and enjoy some leisure eventually when you do retire.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the takeaways for me are, and I think every listener is, sit down for a few, well, actually stand up, do it standing up, write down a list of your goals, the things that you want to be able to do in pre-retirement and retirement, and then really ask yourself, how do your health goals currently match up with that? And I thought I was doing pretty good by not getting seconds anymore. That's one thing that I've had to work very hard on. I'm telling you, Eric, it is tough. My wife is an amazing cook, and she cooks healthy, very, very healthy foods. We don't use a whole lot of the stuff that's in the aisles, which I've never heard that said that way, which makes perfect sense. She cooks with fresh vegetables. Now, we do eat lots of meat, but it's always like fajitas is one of our favorite meals, and that's so many fresh, a variety of vegetables, nothing from a bag, any of that kind of stuff. And it's amazing food. The problem is it's always good for seconds and thirds, and
Sure,
I could definitely sit there and be in misery for the next 4 hours because of how much I ate. But it's everybody has their individual struggles, and I want to take it back to, if you have the financial capabilities, do exactly what you're saying, see the nutritionist, but buy organic, buy healthier, you support a local farmer's market. You're not going to get much better than that when you can get really, really fresh stuff like that. So it's just a mindset, and it's hard to change those things, but this is a great reminder. Yeah, no, and along that line, it's funny. There's a family not too far from us that the son raises chickens, and and they're running around the yard, and I feel a lot better spending my $4 per dozen on his eggs than I do at the store. And they do taste a lot better, so I'm sure it helps in the long run. I hope it helps. Yeah, and again, you're supporting somebody locally, which I think is a great thing, and I agree, they do taste better. I mean, fresh eggs taste so much better. That's, again, just my opinion, but I think it's fantastic. All right. Any other closing thoughts for today's podcast? No, that's it. Just be well and enjoy the rest of the summer here if you're in the Northeast. Eric, here's what I like about this. You're bringing this information to the audience. You're having this conversation with me. We're doing this together, and I think that that's one of the other big steps that people need to be thinking about as they listen to this and think about maybe some changes that they want to make. It's hard to do it by yourself. I know that we're still kind of social distancing and so on and so forth, but there's nothing wrong with calling somebody up and saying, hey, let's go take a walk. You can social distance while walking. Let's go play some tennis. You're on either side of a net, social distance apart. It's not a ton of exercise, but every 2 weeks I take a Monday off. I take every other Monday off to go fishing with my dad. Not That's a ton great. Of exercise, but it's fresh air and it's time well spent. So think about somebody that you could maybe make some changes with, and give them a call and say, hey, look, you know what? I've put on the COVID-19, right? Got that extra 15 to 19 pounds sitting around my belly. I just need to get out and go for a walk. And what a great time to talk and catch up. So that's my thought. For sure. Eric, what do you think about that? No, that's awesome. And as you said, we're all somewhat isolated. So I think just seeing friends and sharing mutual pain sometimes when you're working out is a good thing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. If people want to give you a call and maybe pick your brain about some other ideas and some of the other research that you've done, how do they get a hold of you? Sure. So I would say just go to the website. It's ConnecticutCapital.com, and you can schedule a meeting there, or old school, you can give us a phone call, 203-877-1520. Look forward to hearing from you for sure. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for listening today to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Eric comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This also makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And guess what? This is a great one to share because maybe you'll say, hey, look, let's take a listen to this together and make some changes. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Connecticut Capital Management Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Connecticut Capital. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. Content should not be construed as personalized investment, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your advisor, attorney, or tax advisor in regards to your individual situation. Eric Tashlein is an investment advisory representative of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC and Connecticut Benefits Group, LLC are not affiliated.